This guy is Antonio. He's 25 years old, he is Spanish, and he works in Barcelona for a successful national company. However, Antonio is very ambitious, and he recently obtained an interview in a famous multinational corporation headquartered in Paris, France. While Antonio was waiting for boarding at the Elport airport, a delay of about an hour had just been announced on his flight. Spending time checking the news on his tablet, Antonio realized that earlier that morning a plane from the same company was about to fly with crashed on another route, which was probably the cause of the delay. Totally panicked by what he just read, Antonio decided to leave the airport and find an alternative way to get to Paris. A few hours later, at the Barcelona Sands train station, Antonio took a high-speed train towards Paris. Wait, the reasoning of Antonio in this story is a perfect example of the availability heuristic. Exactly, the crash of a plane from the same company Antonio was about to fly with on the same day is a recent event. It is also a dramatic event, and of course a personally relevant event that ultimately led Antonio to overestimate the likelihood that the plane crashes as he decided not to fly.
3 hours later, on the train in which Antonio is traveling, a phone rings. John realizes the rumble is not coming from the wagon itself but from the inner pocket in his jacket. Desperately, John tries to unlock the phone as fast as possible, noticing that the man with the travel bag is looking disapprovingly at him. Good morning. Is John at the phone? Myself. I'm David Einhorn from Investments Global Mountain. The reason of my call is to notify you that one of your investments managed under our portfolio is going to receive very soon an award for its extraordinary trajectory and unprecedented results in this fiscal year. Said company is Frontier Developments. We wanted to check if our customers with said stock would like to increase their position. I didn't know their success was that impressive. This definitely could be a very good option. Something tells me that it could become the next Tesla. Double my exposure to Frontier, please. His mind drifted towards thinking the stuff he would be able to buy after selling his recently purchased stock. Caution. The reasoning of John is based on his lack of comprehension of regression to the mean. Regression to the mean in this story means that the extraordinary growth of said company is not only based on skills but also on luck, which means that there is a tendency for things to even out over time, leading, in this case, to lower results. He shouldn't have extrapolated this extraordinary good performance into the future expecting for it to be maintained. As they arrived to the station, he couldn't avoid to notice a funny, pretty old, well-dressed woman as she stepped out of the train. Where that woman could be heading?
Madame Blanchard, an old woman, gets off the train. Next station, Lyon. She wants to buy a new house and she has planned to see 3 of them that day. She lost her husband and she is feeling alone. That's the reason why she thinks a house will bring her happiness again. After visiting the first house, the dealer asks her a very high price for it, 492,000 euros. What happens then? When she goes to the other 2 houses, she has in mind that price, so when they ask her a higher price, she thinks it's too much. On the opposite side, a lower price makes her happier. This is called the anchoring effect, which is a cognitive bias that describes the common human tendency to rely too heavily on the first piece of information offered, the anchor, when making decisions. This is what happens with Madame Blanchard's story. The price offered for the first house sets the standard for the rest of the negotiations. So that prices lower than the initial price seem more reasonable even if they are still higher than what the house is really worth. The old woman finds out that buying a house is not so easy. She realizes that happiness is not found in the bricks of a house. Happiness is what happens at home, every moment you spend with someone you love. So she decided that it's better to get a pet. Walking back to the station, she suddenly falls. When she's lying on the floor, a young girl hurries up to help her. She asks whether she's okay. Madame Blanchard starts talking about the pet she's going to buy when she gets back home, and the girl says that she must leave immediately to an interview to Paris.
This jungle is Claire. Claire is on her way to the car in order to get to Paris when she sees a homeless man from an underdeveloped country lying on the street asking for help. At that precise moment, Claire faces a dilemma. I've already helped a woman and have told her I could not stay longer because I have this important appointment in Paris this afternoon to which I really have to get on time. Despite of this man does not seem to be fine. Should I help him, or will he be acting in such a way in order to attract people attention and further steal her something as many pickpockets that look more or less like him do at that moment? She has in mind the fact that she's in a hurry because she has a long car journey and an interview that can change her professional career late this afternoon, and at the same time she's scared that this man could be performing in such a way with the purpose of later taking profit from the situation to leave her wallet or something like this. She takes a decision. She decides that the easier and best thing to do is to look around and see what's the reaction of other people when passing by that man. She notices they don't stop either, so she ends up deciding to get into the car and leave.
Claire arrives to Paris. She's on her way to the main headquarters of the new corporation. She's confusing her emotions. She is excited, but nervous at the same time. When getting into the room, she realizes she's not the only one for the interview, as she actually expected. There are 4 more people. Her emotions start confusing her even more. Anger comes up, and fear too. She is also, however, super excited, even more than before, and not just because of such a good opportunity to develop her professional career, but because one of the guys in the room is super handsome, and he looks like her ex-boyfriend. Actually, it seems to be a connection between them both. After the interview, she goes out and the guy is waiting for her. His name is Antonio, and he is from Barcelona. He proposed her to go out for the date that night. Some hours later, at the restaurant, connection is indisputable, and you can see it in their mimicry. When Claire gets the phone, Antonio gets the phone. When Claire gets excited, Antonio gets excited. But wait, our daily life seems to be profoundly emotional. Emotional tags help us to decide in our life between a sandwich and a donut. Maybe you get the sandwich. But they may also bias our decisions. In this case, Claire emotionally tagged Antonio because of his similarity to her ex-boyfriend. She also may be attributing the excitement and fear of the interview to the attractiveness she feels for Antonio, and so misreading her emotional tagging, looking in her environment for a reason of her physiological arousal. Moreover, she might be anticipating the possible emotion if she does not achieve to get the job, and so feel that love balances such situation. But emotions are transient. Building trust, even in a date, might be done by mimicry. Antonio was imitating often to Claire. Is there real eros or